It is a very special day. One more sleep and the Kman will be grading for his 5th degree black belt in Taekwondo. And as his wife, that's obviously very exciting. But one of the challenges we have as exercise professionals, and I certainly did as an exercise professional and Kman's wife, is how much should we know about martial arts? How much should we know about the martial art that each one of our clients wants to do? And how much should we know about the grading system and what 5th degree black belt actually means? What does becoming a master of your sport, your martial art actually mean? And what does it take? What kind of discipline, commitment and focus does it take to become a world champion in martial arts? Well, I'm about to introduce you to, in 2020, 20 times world champion, gold medal holder, my husband, a very exciting person who's disciplined, committed and focused. He's got a master's degree in exercise science. He is the international director of Max and he's a really great guy. Here he is. Ha-ha!
I just came up from the dungeon from training. How we going, team?
We are in your amazing place of training.
Yeah, this is where all the blood, sweat and tears occur.
I've never seen you cry, so
well, you know the difference between sweat and tears. They're both made of water and salt. One will give you sympathy and the other one will give you results.
Results.
That's a good flying start, right?
So we literally, in 24 hours' time, you will be a 5th degree black belt in Taekwondo.
Well, that's not completely up to me. That's up to the masters whether they give you my 5th degree.
Yeah,
however, I'm training to be deserving of my 5th degree.
And I can say that with absolute positivity and commitment that he will be in 24 hours a 5th degree black belt because I've seen you train, I've known you for over 30 years and you are a committed, focused, disciplined human being.
Well, what I can control is my performance. What I can't always control is the result. But if the performance matches the result, then ideally we'll get the right result.
Okay. So we're going to do this interview in 2 parts.
Okay.
One, the night before your grading.
Which is now.
Yes. And then we're going to chat to you again after the grading and what it takes on the day to grade at that level. But at the moment, we're going to talk about, and I would like everybody to know about those 3 words, the commitment, focus and discipline it takes to get to this level of martial arts. Now, your chosen martial art is Taekwondo, but you've done several other martial arts and you do currently several other martial arts, yes?
Yeah, I've started when I was 10 years of age doing judo and I did that through till I was 19. I'm doing that again now. And I did Taekwondo when I was, excuse me, 12.
Cough into your elbow.
Yeah, exactly right. 12, 13 years of age I started Taekwondo and I carried that on, and when I was around 17, 18 I took up kickboxing and turned pro as a professional kickboxer, did a bit of Wing Chun Kung Fu and I'm currently also doing a bit of karate. So I like to look at all different martial arts and do as much as I can for to be complete in all the skills of what each martial art offers, because each one offers something different.
And if people are wondering what the noise is, it's not somebody dying in Kman's training centre.
That's my coach down there, Brutus. He's been helping me study actually for
today, yes.
And now he's coming here to my dojo, which we call our training area.
You might want to go for
he may want to go outside, so just bear with me. A little Bruce's pedal break. Let's open this door.
He literally has been Kman's coach and trainer. It doesn't matter what time of the day or night, how hot or cold it is. Our little dog Brutus, who's 18 years of age, has been in this training centre, being a part of your training with
Well,
you.
he's a high performance dog. He's got a little All Blacks jumper on. This is Bruce, so you know who we're talking about. This is Broody, and he's a high performer because he's
All Black.
All Black. Yay! Black belt, All Black. There you go. So if you hear him moaning, and because he's about, I guess in human years, probably about 120 now.
The 2 loves of my life are in this room.
Buddy, off you go. Go and have a seat.
All right, so the question that I have, and I think most people do, unless you have an understanding of martial arts, is people often say to you, oh, that thing you do, Kman, that karate thing, or that kung fu thing, or that Bruce Lee thing.
Kung Fu Panda.
But there are some very distinct and different martial arts. So from a background, what are the top 5, do you think, if you were talking about martial arts?
Oh, that's very difficult to
Political
say because I'm going to upset someone who's been left out. But I guess I just categorise them into different styles, depending on how you want to. You have the the grappling, the wrestling type styles where you put arm bars and chokes and you lay in the ground and wrestle with each other. So
and is that judo or wrestling?
Well, they're both. There's from a martial art, there's judo, and then there's Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Brazilian?
Because the Brazilians took judo and turned it into Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which is more groundwork, which you see a lot in the UFC fighting on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Judo is a lot of groundwork, but more on the throws. Brazilian jiu-jitsu aren't so much on the throws, but more on the ground. And then you have wrestling, which is one of the great grappling arts of all time.
It's also an Olympic sport.
Wrestling and judo is an Olympic sport. Brazilian jiu-jitsu has become more famous of late because of the UFC and mixed martial arts.
So let's stop there for a second.
So that would be the three top.
Now the UFC though, because that's what people do know about, and there's a lot of politics involved with it, that's a good or a bad thing. But you've got two guys that go into a cage, or two girls that go into a cage, and they can combine all of these arts in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, so when you see them wrestling on the ground, doing arm bars, then that's either, or they're throwing each other, that's either judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu or wrestling. They'd be the three main areas. There are other grappling martial arts, but they're the three main ones that we know of. Then you have more the striking art, where the hitting. So really there's grappling and striking. Striking is when you're hitting, grappling is when you're arm barring and choking. And when it comes to the striking, you obviously have my art, which is Taekwondo, which is more famous for its kicks. Then you have...
So stop there for a second. You chose Taekwondo because of the kicks, didn't you?
Of course, because...
So how did that happen?
Well, because I saw a Bruce Lee movie when I was a young kid and he just kicked ass. He didn't kick ass, he kicked head. And I thought, wow, that's a kind of... And I was always doing judo at that stage. Well, actually, I wasn't. I saw Bruce Lee and I wanted to do martial art to teach me how to kick. And I saw all these people in their white pyjamas and belts. I thought, that's the martial art. I went there doing judo, expecting I was going to learn how to kick. But after a couple of years, I'm thinking, when am I going to learn how to kick? And it took me a couple of years. So judo is really, there's no real kicking in judo.
From the outsider's point of view, that's a really big differentiation, is the martial arts where you're holding and grappling and you're on the ground have no kicking and punching.
No, there's no kicking and punching or striking in those arts. Yeah, if you go into a wrestling and you kick him in the head, you get disqualified.
Okay.
Same with judo. Which, I guess you could say that's limited. But even in the school ground, I won all my fights with judo. They may hit me once, but as soon as I grab their arm, I've got them on the ground, I flipped them, I put them in an arm bar, and they're saying sorry to me. So
you were the original UFC fighter because you combined them all together.
Well, you don't want to be grabbed by a judo or jiu-jitsu or a wrestler, because as soon as they grab you, then that's pretty much the end of it.
Okay, so that's the grappling sports. Then there's Taekwondo, which is kicking.
And so when I was 13, I saw a little church hall and there's a little people in white pyjamas again doing kicks. I said, that's what I want. So I continued my judo, and it just so happened to be Taekwondo, which is famous for its amazing kicks. So when you see movies with all the fancy kicks, they're pretty much Taekwondo kicks.
Okay.
When you see the flips, they're flipping people, that's more judo. And it could be Aikido if they're flipping them with their fingers and wrists.
Aikido. And then there's also all different kinds of karate, because as an exercise professional, if I used to be naive and thought, well, that person does karate. But I have since found out there are many different styles of karate. Have they all come from the same place?
Oh no, they originate from different parts of the world. But understand, in the world there's over 2,000 martial arts. 2,000.
Okay, so we're just getting an overview today.
Yeah, I'm not going through all of them. But karate is also one of the more famous ones. It became very much world famous after World War II, when the Americans got taught karate by the Japanese who surrendered, and then they took that back to America.
Wow, okay.
And so, karate became very famous, and obviously you got the Chuck Norris.
He's karate.
And then Kung Fu was made famous really by Bruce Lee through his movies, what he used to call Chinese boxing. And there, karate and Kung Fu are more striking. Kung Fu is probably more softer, deflection, where karate is more harder, power through, when Kung Fu will use your energy against you. So they're more striking techniques. Not to say there aren't sweeps and takedowns in karate, but they're not famous for the takedowns, even though some of them are very good at it. So you've got judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, wrestling, the grappling, striking, taekwondo, karate, Kung Fu. Aikido is more, it's like flipping people, but it's not really forceful. I grab your wrist and you get a flip. Like what's his name?
Steven Seagal.
Steven Seagal was very famous for the Aikido.
The movies that always do the martial arts.
The movies, and
do you have martial arts movies? I do.
I guess the movies make martial arts very, very famous, and UFC has really helped that of recent, bringing it to the forefront of the world. And then you have more the sporting versions of the martial arts, which have now become quite famous, such as kickboxing, which is full contact punching and kicking and knees and all sorts of stuff. And then there was Muay Thai
from Thailand,
which is very much striking elbow. They really introduced the elbows and the knees. So
you've got 4 weapons then, besides boxing is just the 2.
Boxing, and obviously boxing is probably...
Brudy's on the ground, he's doing his stretching, and we call it Brita, which is Brutus is high intensity training.
and boxing is probably the most, the historically traditional striking combat sport, which is just pure punching, but they're brilliant at it. You don't want to be punching against them.
Okay, so tomorrow though, you are now going into the top level of taekwondo, because once you get past 6 dan, you actually can't compete anymore, can you?
Well, in some organisations, once you go past 6, you're deemed a master. Therefore, you retire the gloves and you don't go on the mat. And probably because if you're a master on the mat, then everyone feels obliged to make you win because you're the master.
The master.
You can't have the master be 7th dan be beaten by a 1st dan. But some different organisations do allow masters to...
But for you, tomorrow, when you achieve your 5th dan tomorrow, then you've got 4 years before you can grade for 6th dan, 5 years. Yeah. And then after that, you have to reassess.
Another 6 years. So it'll be at least 11 years before I'm even considered master. But I'm not even looking at that. I'm just
want to compete.
I just want to compete and just move forward in
So we will say again, and this is the year of 2020. So if you watch this in 2030, 2040, 2050, I'll just remind you that 2020 was a very unique year because all athletes in the world after March 2020, there was no competition, pretty much.
Yeah, competitions were... Even this year, the competitions I haven't been able to punch people, but I've been going online doing different...
Well, that was going to be my point. So there's been some sports that have started again in June, July with no crowds, but martial arts, there's been no world-level competition for contact. No. Nowhere in the world. So Kman
maybe somewhere, but not in my world.
Yeah. So there's been no opportunities for you to win gold medals, punching or kicking people.
Not in sparring. But I have won gold medals.
And that's so exciting. This year, we've been waiting for your 20th gold medal in Taekwondo, and you achieved it this year online. You competed online in a world championship and won a gold medal.
And so people are thinking, how do you fight online? Well, it's not fighting.
That's my next question. There's 2 parts to most martial arts.
Yeah.
One is the fighting part, and the other part is whether it's patterns or kata for karate.
Kung Fu is called forms, in karate, in Japanese it's more kata, in Taekwondo it's called tools or patterns.
So describe that. What is that? When people say, Kman, you've won so many gold medals in patterns, what is that?
Well, I want you to think of a dance. You have a set choreographed dance, and the person comes out and they do this dance for 1-2 minutes. Hey, Brutus?
Yeah!
It's quite amazing. Brutus is quiet all day, but as soon as the camera comes on, he comes in here and he goes,
I want to be part of this.
I want to be a part of this, yes.
Good on you, darling.
So think of a dance, but instead of doing all the dance routines with the splits and the air jacks and the pirouettes and all that bit and the ballet routines, every movement is a fighting technique.
So it's a choreography to fighting.
Yeah, so because traditionally what happened back in the day, not our day, well back in the dynasties of the Orient. We're talking hundreds of years ago.
So it's been around for a while, the old martial arts.
There was a rule that if you killed someone and took their life, then the family could take your life.
Wow.
So when you were practicing martial arts, you didn't want to accidentally punch someone in the head and kill them because that's the end of your life. And you then had to present your life. So people practice martial arts without a partner, but with imaginary partners. So when you're in a pattern, there'll be someone comes this way and you punch and you kick them, and you go this way and you kick and punch and you do all the stuff. And basically the competition is they're all set.
Listen to you, darling.
Depending on your grade is how hard the routine is. Like you go up a tiered level, up into the black belt. They can range from 20 up to 70 different moves. and you execute them, showing them the traditional movements, and they judge you like a dance on who is the most flexible and the fastest and the fittest and the strongest, the most powerful and got rhythm and all of that stuff. And then they say, well, that was a great, I guess it's a martial art dance.
Yes. But it's interesting because the first time I ever came across this, if you don't know this story, I didn't even know that Kman did martial art. Well, I knew that in his past he had been a martial artist and a kickboxer and a national champion kickboxer, but I never heard the word taekwondo. And he comes home one day and says, I'm going to go back to taekwondo. And I said, tell me about that. And you were already a third dan in taekwondo at that stage.
Yeah.
A third degree black belt.
I got my third dan when I was 22.
And then he says, we're going to compete, of course. Now I know
46, there's a big gap in there, right?
I know my husband he compete at the very best. He always trains and competes at the best. So we go off to the Oceania Championships in Tasmania.
That was the first international comps, yeah.
And he had a book, it was literally the choreography, the patterns for Taekwondo. And I said, so how many of those do you have to know? And it's quite a significant book. And I said, how many of those patterns do you have to know for this competition? And he said...
All of them.
All of them.
And at that time there were, for me, 19 routines, and each routine at the lower level is around 20 moves, but when you get up to the top, we're looking at 68 moves.
In each pattern.
In each pattern. So that's a lot.
And it's not just that you have to know them and put them in the right order, but you have to perform them with power, flexibility.
Grace. Like a ballerina, but obviously not a ballerina. They have to, they're looking at, wow, that's a top level ballerina with good flexibility and control and jumping power. But all the techniques are punches and kicks and knife hands and throat cuts and knee breaks and all sorts of stuff.
And as you share all of that with me, the Taekwondo martial art is from Korea.
It's a Korean martial art, yeah.
And one of the things you have to do for your black belt tomorrow, 5th degree, is you have to know all of those moves in Korean language.
In Korean, so you have to learn another language.
So at this house for the last 4 years, there's been a very progressive build-up to tomorrow. Where you've won multiple world championships in patterns, but tomorrow you have to perform those patterns in front of masters, don't you? And at your absolute best.
Yes.
And you have to know each one of those moves. How many patterns do you have to know for tomorrow?
21.
21 patterns. Some of them have up to 68 moves in them. And you have to know them in Korean.
Yes, all the moves in Korean, and there's a lot of techniques.
Can you see in my face? I'm so incredibly proud of my husband because I know that he's fully prepared for tomorrow. I'm so excited.
And you also have to know all the history of Taekwondo, because there's a culture thing that you have to understand, the morals and the ethics and the courtesy and all the culture. And the book is quite the condensed encyclopedia of Taekwondo is about that thick. That's the condensed. But the full encyclopedias, there's books that thick, but there's about 20 of them. Because it's all been documented. It's like you think the Bible's big to read. You won't see the encyclopedia.
Bible. So here's a great question, because this is technically what we're doing today isn't about you. It's about what it takes to be a world champion. And a lot of people will say, well, I don't do martial arts or I don't do even a sport. But people who want to lose weight, people who want to have a great education, people who want to be a great parent, people who want to be a great lover, people who want to be just a great person, it doesn't just fall out of the sky in a pink box.
No, you're not. It's not lucky, but luck stands for labour under continued knowledge.
Right. So let's just take people through the amount of training you've been doing, the time frame it takes, and the effort that you've been putting into your training.
Well, that's a great, it reminds me of a quote from a master, and he was at a world championship in Jamaica, when we were in Jamaica, and he was chatting to one of my colleagues, a young girl who's competing. And the master asked her on the side, because he's walking around chatting to the competitors, and says, how long have you been preparing for this competition for? And the young girl said, I've been training for 6 months for this competition, because it's a world championship. And then the master said, how long have you been doing Taekwondo for? And
Brutus says a very long time. I pick him up, hey? Keep going.
Yeah, you're going off like a frog in a sock, aren't you, mate? There we go.
There he
is. To be in the video.
So what did the master say?
Well, the master, how long have you been doing Taekwondo for? And the young girl says 5 years. And then he said, well, I stand here to correct you. You haven't been training for this competition for 6 months. You've been training for this competition for 5 years. So my point being is, how long did it take you to train for the next competition? Well, I never stopped training.
When did you start martial arts? How old were you?
Well, when I was 10. And then I fought through Taekwondo through 22, professional kickboxing through to 26. Then I hung up my gloves to focus on my business. But then I got back in at 8, 9 years ago, and I always train. Whether it be a competition or it be Christmas or no matter what, I'm always training.
Christmas, birthday, Easter, every day the Kman trains.
So
he does brush his teeth every day too.
So basically what you do is, as you come up to a grading or you come up to a competition, you just more narrow your focus on the particular skills required for that, and you narrow your concentration and intensity for that event. So how long do you train for? Always. You're always training. And martial arts is a way of life. It's not like a sport. You have a off-season, in-season. To me, it's just life, and then it happens.
So let's talk about now, though, the actual specifics of training. You have to be really fit to fight somebody for 2 or 3 minutes. You have to be super, super fit. So what do you do for cardiovascular training if you are competing at a world championship, so that you have to be super fit to fight? What are you doing for cardiovascular training?
Fight.
Did you hear that?
I don't do any.
Don't you go running?
I'm not in a running competition.
Don't you skip?
I don't do a skipping. Yes, I don't do burpees. I'm not in a world burpee competition. So all of the training, I train exactly what I do in the competition, but I train with high intensity. So therefore, all my physiological adaptations are very specific to that movement pattern, that speed, that power, that endurance.
So you kick and you punch.
I kick and I punch. And when I want to get fit for patterns, I just do patterns at a very high intensity. The only supplementary training I would do, which is something which you can't develop to an elite level from doing air punches and punching bags, is strength training. So I do that once a week just to protect my joints.
And can I just get you to repeat that? You don't go to the gym 5 days a week, 3 sets of 10, 27 exercises. Because people think strength training is what that is.
Wear the joints out. My joints get enough wear and tear throwing 10,000 punches a week, let alone going in the gym and doing ridiculous repetitions on my shoulder.
So you do high intensity, high heart rate, maximum training for kicking and punching, and then once a week you lift heavy to stay strong.
Well, there's 2 parts there. I might be developing a new skill, so that's not at high intensity. I'm working on balance and the angles and getting the technique right. But once I get the technique right, the mechanics right, the anatomy right, then I start to drill it at a high intensity, and then I drill it at an intensity which is relevant to competition.
So, a training session lasts for how long?
I guess off season, like during Christmas and stuff like that, they will probably last 40 minutes. In the middle, when I'm building up for a competition, they'll last about an hour. And then as I go into the competition, they'll last about 30 minutes, because it's more quality, not quantity.
So, building up to your 5th degree black belt tomorrow, it's been physical training, but also mental training and theoretical training. You've had to learn Korean.
You have to learn all the Korean and the history and all the theory, and the Korean version of the theory.
And this is a really silly question. On a scale of 0 being unprepared and 10 being fully prepared for tomorrow?
Well, I'm fully prepared for the time that I've got. So I have this philosophy. It's not about being perfect, it's putting in a perfect effort. So it's not about doing a perfect performance, it's presenting a perfect effort. So, because you can't always control things, but what you can control is your effort.
So you're going into tomorrow fully 100% fit, 100% strong, 100% prepared. Yeah.
As best I can.
He's being humble. I live on the other side of this relationship where this has been, it's just such a pleasure to watch another human being put in such an effort. And I share that because we, on a daily basis, we work with people who want to do just enough to get by. And how would that go if you were How would you feel at the end of tomorrow if you did just enough to get by? I feel sick even saying that.
Well, there are people who go for that 51% pass mark. But I was always taught, do everything you can, put everything you've got into everything that you do.
Can you say that again? Put everything
you've got into everything that you do. If it takes the same amount of time to put everything in than not to put everything in. And then ultimately at the end of it, you walk out and you have to feel, proud of what you've done.
You have to feel proud.
Yeah, and if you know you've done a half effort, then, and even if you pass, it's almost a shallow pass because you thought, well, I passed, but I'm not really proud of the pass because I never gave my best. And that's something which is hard to live with. It's okay to do your best. It's better to do your best and fail than not do your best and pass.
Wow.
Because there's always going to be an emptiness to that medal or an emptiness to that belt or emptiness to that certificate or that achievement. There's going to be a certain emptiness to it because you're going to look at that certificate and you thought, yes, I've got the certificate, the same certificate as everyone else got, but really you know what's behind that certificate. I was talking to one of my colleagues, fight competitors and coaches the other day, Carl, and on his wall he has 11 World Championship gold medals, and I was just looking at them and he says, and they're nicely framed, and he has all his students there. And I said to him, he says, you know what, he says, these students don't realise how many thousands and thousands of hours went behind each one of those medals. They just see a little gold medal, but it's not what the gold medal is. It's what you did to deserve it. And you have to live by your own standards. You could have just passed, or you could pass to the best you can possibly be. And only you know the truth.
The two parts of this interview is this is the day before the grading. So the effort that's gone into this has been from 10 years of age, and it's been severely amped up in the last 2 months.
Yeah, the temperature's been going up.
Well, we've been counting down now, and that's in your headspace. I know that you do that. It's like 18 weeks to go, 16 weeks to go, 12 weeks to go. And
then you go down to number of sleeps.
and we have one left. But
is there going to be good sleep?
The outcome of tomorrow, regardless, you know that you've put in your very best effort.
Yeah, you can be at peace the night before the competition because you know that you couldn't have done anything more. You are the best prepared that you can possibly be, and then you're going to go in there with a feeling of excitement and anticipation rather than nervousness, and because you're nervous. It's a different type of nervous. Are you nervous because you're not ready and you're hoping to get through and you fear of failing, or you're nervous because you're 100% prepared and you want to make sure that you can express that on that day, and you don't want an earthquake to stop you from doing it. So it's a different type of nervousness.
So let's relate that to
positive
us mere mortals.
Us mere mortals.
Who don't do a martial art.
Yeah, but you're someone who's done 21 marathons, so that says something about.
And let's use that as an example to run 42.2 kilometres.
Yeah.
The same thing. If you're nervous before the 42.2 kilometres, the only reason would be is that you haven't put in the training and you're not ready.
You shouldn't be in a position of, geez, I hope I can finish this.
Yes.
Or geez, I hope I pass this. You go in there knowing, and one of my students the other day who was training me, she says, when do you find out whether you pass? I said, oh no, if I passed.
Yeah.
If you sit in an exam, you walk out that door, you know whether you passed. It's whether how well you passed based on someone's interpretation of what you presented.
Yeah. Okay, so let's use our max professionals. So people who want to open a business, people who want to be an exercise professional, people who are studying to be an exercise professional. How would you relate the martial arts to something that people would do in their normal life? What's the 3 to 5 steps you would recommend that you've put into your martial arts that you would recommend for people to put into their business, into their study, into their life?
Well, first of all, you do it because you love it. You don't do something for someone else or because it's a status or whatever to show off. You do it because it's meaningful to you, most importantly, because really no one else cares.
No.
We're standing here talking about my martial arts, but there's 7 billion people in the world, and you're probably the only one who really does care. Maybe you're watching going, yeah, that's kind of cool.
But how does it relate to me?
Whether I pass or not, you could not give a rat's bottom. However, maybe you can say, well, maybe you can use these lessons to go and chase your dream and achieve your dream. So first of all, you have to do what you love. Now, there's only 2 reasons why people fail. Number one, they don't start.
And we deal with that every day. People who would love to be an exercise professional but would love to start their own business and they just
But they
don't.
start. So
they've failed.
That's a heavy weight to
I could have, should have, would have, but I didn't.
That dream on your shoulders that you're not taking action. The best way to get the dream off your shoulders is to take action and make the dream a reality. So number one, you don't start. Number two, you don't finish. And everything that you want, if you start and you keep going till you finish, you will succeed. And I remember someone asked you, going into a marathon, and they said, someone who's run 21 marathons, do you have any advice of how I should run this marathon? And you said so beautifully, well, when you're at the start line, when the gun goes, you start running, and then you keep running and you don't stop until you cross the finish line. That's how you finish the marathon. Now,
that was advice given to me. That's not even mine. I just took it on board and went, well, let's go.
But if you keep going, you will get there.
Of course you will.
Some people run faster, some not so fast. But if you keep going, and any dream is if you start it and you keep going and you don't stop, you will eventually get to the finish line. But as soon as you stop, then you are conditioning yourself to stop. And when I ran my first marathon, I said to myself, no matter what happens, I'm not going to walk. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to walk. As soon as you walk, then you're saying it's okay to walk. So even though I was doing it tough, 3/4 of the way through, my mind and body was saying, stop and start walking, and my spirit was saying, no, do not stop.
I'm stopping here.
So when I finished the marathon, if someone says, did you run a marathon? I can honestly say yes. Rather than, well, I ran some and walked some. So I didn't really run a marathon. I did walking and running and stopping. And that's okay, but even if they're little steps. So if you keep taking those little steps towards your dream.
So you've got to love it and you've got to decide you're not going to stop.
You've got to love it. You've got to start, and you've got to finish.
Keep going.
Now, don't worry about how long it takes you or which path you go. As long as you keep moving, you will get there. The biggest challenge people have is they stop.
Well, there's an interesting question because a lot of people ask us how long does it take to become an exercise professional, and I can give you the shortest time frame and I can give you the longest time frame, but it's irrelevant to you because the people that did it in the shortest time frame had the drive, the determination, the focus, commitment, and they didn't stop and they did it and they went.
Yeah.
The people that took much longer, congratulations to them because they didn't give up.
No, they kept going.
They kept going and kept going and kept going until they achieved. And that's what you're sharing, isn't it? It's about the don't give up until
Don't give up. And there's another question is how long does it take for an average person to get a black belt? And the people say, well, how many years? And the average person doesn't get a black belt.
And they really don't, do they?
Because most of them stop around green belt. And then the next big one is they stop at black belt. But black belt is just the beginning. Black belt is like graduating from university with a degree. That's just the start.
Well, it's like receiving your max diploma in fitness business. It's the start of your career path.
It's the start. It's really the start of your learning.
Yes.
Up until then, you just really know all the basic movements, and then maturity through your grades after black belt is when you really start to understand the application.
So there's a very important question there, and it's different for most martial arts. Most people say black belt, and when I hear that, I know that you do too, but I don't have that. I don't know much about martial arts. But when I hear I have a black belt in martial arts, I always have a major level of respect for somebody. It goes up because the commitment, focus, and discipline it takes to get a black belt in any martial arts should be.
As long as it's a reputable martial art and organisation. There are some places you can buy a black belt on the weekend. Well, that's not.
And then let's go back then. Imagine if you bought one on the weekend, or you just did some dodgy martial art that isn't recognised, and you still wear the black belt. We won't even talk about that. That's ugly.
You can always buy a gold medal too.
Yeah, you can. But all martial arts start at white belt. Is that right? So if you wear an outfit,
not all.
No.
Yeah, some don't have belts.
Okay.
Some have sashes, but the majority start at white belt.
Okay. And there's all different colours going through.
Colours of the rainbow.
And then the black belt is the beginning of the advanced journey. Would that be fair?
Yeah, so in Taekwondo, the white belt means because you're pure and you're innocent, and then you go to the yellow belt, which is representative of the ground and the soil where plants grow, and then you have the green belt where the plant starts to grow, and that's the green, and then you have the blue belt that goes towards the sky, and that's the growth, and then there's the red belt where you have enough skills and that you're actually quite dangerous but in a real wild way.
Yeah.
Because you're not really controlled. Then the black belt is that, yes, black means darkness, means you're no longer fearful of the dark.
Isn't that beautiful? So that each belt has a representation of life.
They don't randomly pick colours. Every belt has a deeper meaning to it and how it's been designed.
Brady says, I know this because I've been reading your book, Dad.
He's been helping me with my studies today.
So if you're an exercise professional and somebody talks to you about being in martial arts, and this is one of the things that is offensive or disrespectful, and I'd love people to hear it from you, when people say to Kman, oh, that karate stuff that you do, how does that make you feel?
Nothing, because it's just ignorance, and that's okay. You know, that's like me saying that origami thing you do. Well, to them it's everything, but to me I don't understand it.
As an exercise professional, I'm asking you to be respectful and to use your communication skills. And if somebody says they do a martial art, or they do karate, or they do taekwondo, or Muay Thai, or judo, or any of the 7,000 that there are, ask the questions. What do you reckon, Broody? You have to ask the person, what is it that you do? Why do you do it?
Of course, absolutely. I mean,
where did you start?
When
do you do
if
it?
If they're your client and I do egg collecting, then ask about the egg collecting. If I do martial arts, then ask about... But as an exercise professional, my advice is know the martial arts, because it's such a popular thing in society today.
Well, out of 7 billion people, how many people do a martial art?
It's the most practiced sport of everything. You know, the UFC is massive. There's not a movie that you don't see punches and kicks in. So it's.
Well, one of our students who trains with you, she wants to be a television and movie star, and she needs to learn how to punch and kick.
Well, I have a number of clients who are just ladies. One wants to learn how to punch and kick because she wants to be a movie actress, and you can't be an actress these days unless you know punch and kick, because all the action.
I think I just said that.
Yeah, with all the action movies. Another one of my clients just wants to learn confidence and self-defense, and boxing and fitness and kickboxing. It's just so cool to do these days.
So number one, as an exercise professional, you need to know that martial arts exist. You need to have some general knowledge of the different kinds of martial arts.
I think that's probably a wise thing to do as an exercise professional.
And if your personal client says, I do a martial art, should you then do what? Some bit of research maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're an exercise professional, you should have a good understanding of what's the difference between rugby league and rugby union, as you should know the difference between karate and judo, because they're not the same.
Broody! Yay!
We are exercise professionals, and a big part of exercise is sport. So,
then from a training point of view, and this is a really important question, if I'm training you, and I'm not a martial artist, my role is not to teach you skill, is it?
Not unless you're a martial artist.
It even sounds silly coming out.
Your role is to get me fit and strong for martial arts.
So it's not about having to learn how to kick and punch yourself. Mind you, if you train somebody like Kman, you really want to know how to hold the pads effectively so that you can get a really good workout.
You shouldn't be able to hold the pads for anybody.
Yes.
Because boxing and punching and kicking is now such an integral part of personal training, being an exercise professional these days, because a lot of people like to lose weight while punching and kicking stuff, because it's exercise with purpose and application.
Well, even my mother, when she started at 74, you got her boxing because the impact of hitting something's really good for your bones.
She just loved punching stuff. In the 70s and 80s, Brutus just wants to go outside.
Excuse us, Broody has to go outside. Yes, my mother loved boxing so much. If you haven't heard this story, when she had one of her heart attacks and had to have, when she came out of surgery, one of the first things she said to the cardiologist was, when can I start boxing again? So she was 80 at the time. So for an 80-year-old woman, good for her heart, good for her lungs, good for her bones, good for her self-confidence. And the most excitable part was that the coaches bought her her own boxing gloves. And she just loved it.
She loved to punch.
So it's a really good idea to understand that the martial arts is a big deal. Isn't it, Broody? It's just gorgeous.
I think he's hungry.
Yeah. It's really important that you find out about your particular client. And for those of you that are going to be training Kman, and for some of you, it will be your final exercise session for you to become a qualified exercise professional. Broody cutie!
He's got a good set of lungs
let me talk. Please know that yes, Kman was a national champion kickboxer. Yes, he's done judo. Yes, he's done karate and still does both of those. But his sport of choice is taekwondo. And we often I find it fascinating, because if you walk into Kman's office, it is just full of trophies and gold medals and amazing things about martial arts. And very few people even ask you. They go into your office and
Nothing. That doesn't affect me. However, if I was the average client and I was an artist and I had fantastic art on my wall and you were an exercise professional
And I didn't take notice of it.
notice and ask questions about it, then I would say that you weren't really interested in me and my art and my passion. You're more interested in my wallet.
Yes. So we're going to complete this interview in one more sleep when Kman is a 5th Dan black belt in Taekwondo.
And it's really interesting that it's a Korean martial art that originally came from Japanese karate.
But the numbers...
Numbers are Latin.
Yeah, so you will have, instead of a 1V on your black belt, you will have tomorrow a V on your black belt.
And that's almost like the Italian scenario. Why is the pizza round, served in a square box and cut up in triangles? Answer that one for me.
He's ready for his 5th Dan grading tomorrow. Thank you, Kman. 5. 5th Dan. Kman is a 5th Dan in Taekwondo. He's a 5th degree black belt in Taekwondo. It is now a sleep after the grading, and Kman graded with excellence. Haha. So here he is, the 5th Dan, Kman.
5 in Latin. Well, that way. Either way. Hey, Rory.
Hey, Kman.
It's a good day.
It was such a special day. And this part of our sharing Taekwondo martial arts with the world is what it takes on the day and how we can relate it to what people do on a day-to-day basis to live their life with excellence. And on that day, on Saturday, Super Day, you were a man of excellence. So what goes on in your headspace? You went to bed. The next time you went to bed, you're a 5th Dan.
Yes, well, I guess the morning of, I said, well, at the end of the day, we're going to know the result.
Yes.
And the day's going to pass you by anyway, so don't worry about the day because it's going to pass you by anyway. So put everything you got and everything you do, push through the pain barriers, the mental barriers, and at the end, the result will... There's a great saying, you don't raise to your expectations, you lower yourself to your level of training.
Say that again, because that's a really great quote.
You don't raise to the level of expectations, you lower yourself down to your level of training, which means you have to trust the training. If you haven't done the training, then you're going to be a bit cautious about it. But if you've done the training, then the pressure will give you the result from all the pressure and the training leading up to it. And, yeah, because it was a 6-month lead up of pretty high intense training, I was confident that I could trust my training, trust the process, and with all the pressure, a diamond will come out at the end.
So that I think it's a UFC quote. I went into the ring with coal in my mouth and I came out pooing diamonds.
Pooing diamonds, yeah. Pressure makes diamonds.
Yeah.
And,
go back a step.
Yeah.
How did you sleep the night before such a major event?
I pretty much didn't really, but I always know that the adrenaline will get you through, and a lack of sleep is not going to stop you when you're in the moment.
No.
I've had plenty of sleep up until that moment in my
You
entire
sleep
life.
plenty now.
Losing about 6 hours sleep over a lifetime of sleep is going to be the make or break. And I know that when you get in the moment, the fight and flight response of the pressure, then the adrenaline, then you don't go in there going, geez, I'm very tired. It's like you know, back in the caveman days and you had a bad night's sleep and all of a sudden a tiger jumps into your campsite. You're not going to, please tiger, I'm really tired today, I can't run. The adrenaline's going to get you up and you're going to be out of there and you're not going to be thinking about your sleep. And really, how tired are you really if you didn't know how much sleep you had?
So great. So the other thing that's really interesting that a lot of people may not prepare this way, but I've always watched you do this, whether it's business or sport or any interesting or tough or challenging situation. You have a morning ritual of a shower and a shave, and you always leave the house looking like a top-level professional. So you changed into your Taekwondo gear when you got to the event.
Yeah, I didn't go in there in tracky dacks and a hoodie and jandals or flip-flops or
thongs.
I'm always, I guess it's your standards that you set for yourself. And I was saying this to one of my colleagues who was also a growing Kman Rune, and I said, it's not about going in there to pass the test, it's about going in there to express your own standards. It's your standards you have to abide by. Even if you passed and you didn't raise to your standards, then you're going to be a little bit disappointed. So my standards are applied not just in my performance, but all aspects of that performance, which is the discipline of presentation, the discipline of all the little things. You don't leave your home a mess to go out there, become great at something, because that character is going to be passed on to the other things that you do. So it's all about character. You do the things that you know you should do when you should do it, even if you don't feel like doing it.
Definition of discipline.
Exactly.
So it's interesting though, because I'm your wife, and it's such a pleasure because I've seen you compete in bodybuilding, I've seen you compete in marathons, I've seen you compete now in multiple world championships for martial arts, and you don't get stressed. You're always cool and calm. You never get angry. You never get annoyed. In the morning of the grading, you get up and you feed the animals and you pick up the dog poo.
I don't mind part. Well, it's very humbling. You know, I got up really early that morning.
Yeah.
Normally early and it was dark, so I'm going out in the dark picking up the dog poo, and I think, wow, this is really brings me down to a very humble level. I'm picking up my dog poos, I'm putting the rubbish out, I go out there and I feed the animals. Now, I could have easily said, hey,
Rowan,
babe,
could you please do
can
it?
you feed the dog
but
feed?
he doesn't.
This is my grading day. Can you feed the animals? Can you do all my chores? No. I don't drop all my responsibilities to take on one new achievement. I keep my responsibilities that way. I go in there knowing that I've fulfilled all of that. I don't have to leave anything behind. I get everything's done, and I can go in there and I can be fully focused on what I have to do.
So the day of the grading is technical first. We have to answer questions.
Yeah, well, the
How many?
Well, the start of the grading was, obviously everyone's a little bit nervous, but it's a good nervous, because if you've done the work, you're going to be confident that you're going to come through, because you can put pressure on me, but I become unbreakable.
Yep.
If I do the training, you become unbreakable mentally and physically, and you make training like hell, so the game is like heaven.
So you went to heaven.
Yeah, well, exactly right. Yeah, so if you make your training harder than the event, then the event will be a joy. It will be you actually enjoy it.
So did you have a great time?
Of course. I always remember the great quote by Muhammad Ali. I'll put up with the pain in training so I can live the life of a champion.
Yeah.
And that feeling of champion, the pain all goes away. Or the pain of the grading, because it's pretty tough grading. Yeah. Tougher than ones I've had in the past, and physically and mentally.
So it should be, it was fifth day.
Well, of course it is. You don't want it to be easy. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you, right? So yeah, we started the day with all the official stuff, and then we did a lot of the theory, and there was a theory test.
How many questions in a theory test?
Well, there was about 87 questions, all about the terminology and the Korean, and you're learning a whole new language. Yeah. So this is not just spell taekwondo. It was quite.
And for our max exercise professionals, for example, where we give you everything that you need to know, and we share with you exactly what you need to know to become a top level exercise professional, to become qualified. The taekwondo technical is different, isn't it? You have big textbooks to learn from, and you have to learn everything because you don't exactly know.
I guess 70% of the stuff what you're going to be asked, so you can prepare for that. But there's going to be that 30% which is just random. So you just have to have a good general knowledge.
And what do you do from a headspace point of view if you don't know the answer, or you can't remember the answer, or it's not coming to you straight away? What do you do?
I just move on to the next question, because when you take the pressure off, then sometimes the answer appears. Mm-hmm. The more you think about something, the less it comes to you. Sometimes you just got to let it go. It's like that time when you're trying to remember someone's name. And the more you think about it, the more your brain freezes. Just let it go. And then soon in the future you go,
3 o'clock in the morning,
Jonathan, that's who it was. And you can do that with an exam. Don't hold on to that one question.
Rudy's here. Can you hear him?
You can hear his
Rudy's back.
He's not barking this time. So there's 87 questions, and one's not going to sink the ship. Yeah. So move on and come back and plug it up if you have to later. But if you don't worry about it, because overall you're going to come out on top.
So the other interesting thing was this was senior grading. This is the best of the best grading. Yeah, they had third, fourth, fifth and sixth dan grading.
People going for fourth, fifth and sixth dan grading. Yeah.
Okay, so I had the pleasure of coming in to watch the final part.
The public viewing.
The public viewing.
After we've been tortured for 4 hours.
It was interesting because I caught a cab and the cab driver said to me, "Are you nervous?" And I said, "There's nothing about my husband that I need to be nervous about. I know that when I get there, he's done everything to the very, very best and top level." It was interesting though, because we watched, as the public, we watched the 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th dans doing patterns together. It looked like an amazing dance routine of martial artists. But during the day you said you had done all of the patterns. So how many patterns did you have to do?
About 22, and they just drive us through them all, and they take anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 minutes each of full intense, and you only get about 10-second break in between. So it's like doing 22 massive high intense interval sessions of 1.5 to 2.5 minutes, and then you get 10 seconds, you go into the next one, and you have to express that. And I guess that's great. And as you're going through it, yeah, your legs are jelly and you're huffing and puffing, you're trying to compose yourself, but you know that the pain will go away, and how you deal with that pain,
black belt will be there.
How you deal with that pain will determine whether at the end of it you feel proud or disappointed.
Yeah.
And if you put everything you got into everything you do, you never regret. Even if it doesn't, one of my patterns which I really wanted to get right, it didn't quite come right, but I knew that I did what I could do to get it the best I possibly can. So even though that's just challenging me to work on it even harder, but all the rest I was very happy with.
It was a pleasure to watch. So there's the patterns, then you do sparring, and you had the pleasure of sparring with the MMA fighter.
Yeah, well, one of the best in the world. And
yes.
As soon as he called my name up to him, I went yes, because he was the best fighter there.
And so did I. And other people looked at me and said, "Oh no,
I don't want an easy fight. I want to fight the best." And
And how old is he for you?
Oh, he's over 20 years younger than me.
It was awesome. And for a lot of people, the highlight of the day was your sparring session with Carl.
It was great.
Which was really awesome.
We trained together and it's great.
So patterns, and then sparring, and then self-defense. Set sparring, and then breaking.
Then we had to smash through, forests, punching and kicking.
And I had the pleasure of having 3 people there who had never seen Taekwondo before. And when they set up the breaking, the girls went, "Are they going to break like they do in the movies?" And then Kman comes along and just whack, smack.
Well,
so
we all did exceptionally well.
Yeah, everyone broke really well.
Everyone rose beyond their training and probably high to their expectation, because I guess their training was so solid that you're not going to go below your training. Everything's above. And
it was such a pleasure to watch. So from a performance point of view, you knew that you had, and this is the other thing I love, you always say this about competition, that fitness and strength will never be the reason why you don't win.
Because you have complete control of that.
Yeah.
So never let lack of fitness or lack of strength be the reason why you quit.
So no one's ever going to beat you because you get too puffed and you can't keep going.
No, they'll only beat me because they're better than me, and that's okay. I'm okay with that, and that will make me better. But to lose because you're unfit, there's no excuse for that, because you have complete control of that.
So time will pass you by anyway. What's that? I put it straight in one of my books last week. The time it takes to do nothing and the time it takes to do anything is exactly the same.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of people who were looking at doing this grading, because you've got to train 6 months. And, excuse me.
Coughed into his elbow, awesome.
And they were thinking about it. And that 6 months has passed us by. It ended up being longer than 6 months because of what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
So it's been about 9 months. But that 9 months has passed us by. And
some people couldn't remain focused. I can't do another 3 months of having to wait.
No, they popped off. And, and it took them 9 months not to get a 5th dan. It took me 9 months to get a 5th dan. The only difference is what we did in that 9 months. And they probably thought about it, and I did it. And that's not just for me. I'm not here to impress you, but impress upon you that it's up to you. You can go through the 9 months of discomfort, out of your comfort zone, pain, training, tiredness, soreness, injuries and stuff like that. And at the end, you got the gold medal, you got the 5th dan, you got the achievement, you got the certificate, the qualifications, and you've got that. And once you've got that, no one can ever take that away from the rest of your life. And that's what I share is, commit to things that will make something of you. Commit to things that will put pressure on you to make you better. And when you do, you become, it's not about the medal, it's not about the dan, it's not about the achievement, it's not about the money, it's about the person you have become to deserve the medal, the dan, the achievement, whatever it might be. And that is something that is in your DNA, it's in every cell of your body that you're proud of and you carry with you for the rest of your life. However, if you jumped off board and you didn't do it, then you got nothing to show for it those 9 months. And the only thing you're carrying now is, rather than being proud, you're carrying a regret.
Regret, ugly, yuck.
Geez, I should have done that. He did that. And I went through the 9 months, but it's really a blip in time in the whole picture of things. And if you do that and keep committing to new things, then you're going to go through life achieving lots of great things, but most importantly, becoming a better person that doing things that build your character.
It's my husband.
Mm.
So, it's 2020. In 2020, you achieved your 5th Dan in Taekwondo. You're also a gold medalist. Wherever the whole world stopped competing, you're a gold medalist by online competing. Yeah. And a lot of people will get to the end of 2020, and some people are saying it already. I've just written off the year.
The only thing that I have got to show for it is fat.
Yeah, a lot of people have put a lot of weight
or
on,
done
that's
nothing.
for sure.
Or they
Yeah.
use, you know, I always say, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, I said, look, for every negative thing that happens in the world around you, do 2 positive things to counteract it.
Wouldn't that be great advice?
Then you're always going to end up on top of things when other people are living under things.
But for the people that, and we're almost at the end of 2020, but it could still be, if it's been your worst year ever up until now, it could still be your best year ever.
I've got 2 more World Championships. Okay, to the end of the year, I've got 2 more World Championships. I'm grading for my next belt in karate. I've taken up karate this year.
And you're going to judo on Fun Day Friday?
I'm going back to judo. I haven't been down there because I've been protecting my body for the grading, but I'm back to judo. I know there's a national championships coming up. I only got 4 weeks to get ready for that, but I'm not sure how I'm going to go. But I'll give it a crack and we'll see what the body says. So, yeah, there's still plenty of life left. Fifth Dan is just one of the things in the year. It's not the thing. Geez, that's only one thing out of 365 days. What are you going to do with 2 of the other days?
So this is a very important question though. You, often people say lucky or DNA, that's just who he is, or I'm not that person so I can't do that. But it's a bit like when people say, how do you get to travel around the world? And I always answer, well, obviously at the moment you can't, but I answer with, you go to the travel agent, you book your ticket, you save the money and you go.
Not hard, it's not rocket science.
So it's not that you're lucky, you find the competitions, you enter the competitions, you train for the competitions.
Well, entering in the timeline, because obviously it's easy to talk about a goal, but a goal without a timeline, it's not a goal, it's just a dream. So once you've got a timeline, and as you get closer to the event, you know, that creates its own internal pressure to train harder.
You have to be ready.
Hey, I have to be ready by this particular
time.
When
people say, I'll train for the marathon and then I'll book in for the marathon. No, it's the other way round.
No, yeah, book in, then train.
And then you have to be ready for that date.
You've got to commit. Sometimes you've got to jump in the deep end and start swimming, mentally anyway.
So coming up to the end of the year, though, I always find this interesting, having coached so many people in my life. People talk about, and I'll say it again, people have written off 2020, which means they'll set goals for 2021. What if you arrive at 2021 in the best shape of your life, with the qualifications that you need, with the education and training that you need, with the headspace that is going to make sure that 2021 is the best year that you've ever had? What if you did that?
It would be an amazing year. It would be a year that you remember for the rest of your life, and do things that, you know, create and capture magical moments. You know, and the magical moments are the things that you do, which is out of the ordinary, that are meaningful to you. Other suggestion I'll say is always make sure that you take photos, because you know, you can't trust your memory. You know, you take photos, do film. Like I filmed the whole grading. I've got a friend of ours who's a photographer to capture them, and that way, you know, it's not just to show your grandkids or our grandpuppies.
No grandkids here.
But you know, you can always, you know, you don't live in the past, but it's also good to reflect in the past, to go, wow, you know, I did that. And that's going to inspire you to go and create more magical moments, because one of our good friends, Wayne Pearce, taught me that a long time ago. He says life is about creating and capturing magical moments in life that you're going to remember, because at the end of your life, all you're going to remember is your memories. It's not going to be, you're not going to remember the things you didn't do, you're going to remember the things that you did. But those who do nothing will remember the things they didn't do in a regretful way. And the weight of regret weighs heavy over time, doesn't it? Get it off your back.
So to get to the end, to make 2020 your best year ever, and at our house we always say this, your next meal could be the healthiest meal you've ever eaten. Your next half an hour could contain the best exercise session you've ever done. Your next day could be the best learning experience you've ever had, because you start study, or you complete your study, or you continue to study. If everything you do is heading you in the direction of your goal, how do you feel?
Well, I call it the rule of one. You're only one meal away from eating healthy. You're only one step away from heading in the right direction. You're only one training session from being active.
Yep.
you're only one thought of living a positive life. So it's not like wow, I have to change everything. No, you just need to change one, and that one will lead to the new direction and the new path that will create a new life. Don't look at the next, as I always say, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step.
But not tomorrow.
Not tomorrow. You know, there's three times to do something. It's like the old saying: the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant it is now. The worst time is tomorrow. So the best time to do something that's important to you is when you first thought about it. That's the worst time. It means that's past. You can't do anything about it.
It was the best time, but you can't change it.
The worst time to do it is tomorrow.
Because
now you're teaching yourself to procrastinate. There's always going to be tomorrow. The second best time to do something is right now, in the moment. Because the greater the time frame between the thought and the action, the less likely there's going to be action.
Now, that just flowed out of your mouth. But say that a little bit slower, because the philosophy of that is literally a philosophy for life.
Yeah. Act on your thoughts.
So if you think about something, the longer it takes you to do it, the less likely you are.
Yeah, because the flame of passion to do it will, yes, let's do that. And by the next day, it's like, yes, you do that. And the next day, and then you start to look for reasons and excuses or not to do it. But when the emotion is high, take the action, because emotion drives motion.
So if you are feeling emotional right now and you really want to do something with 2020, so you can look back on it and say, this was the best year of my life, because what's the next one thing you're going to do?
That works in reverse. If you don't feel the emotion, then do the motion, because motion also creates emotion. So if you don't feel like exercising, start exercising, and I guarantee within a minute you actually start feeling it. The blood will pump, the hormones will be released, everything will start to fire. You go, wow, I actually feel good. And you never regret not doing an exercise session. You never regret not reading a book. You never regret doing something that's important to you, but you will regret not doing it. So even if you don't feel like it, do it, and you'll soon feel like it really quickly. Some of my best training sessions is when I least wanted to do them, because it'd been a long day, it was late at night, and I was a bit tired, and you could mentally come up with a whole list of things.
You could,
and you go through them. But ultimately, and everyone does that. Champions do that, losers do that, winners do that, not doers do that. They go through the same process. The only difference is that the champions of life, in their life anyway, they do it, and they do it by two ways. They think either, when I'm going through that thought process and I'm thinking, oh, I'm a bit tired, I didn't get much sleep last night, and then I just ask myself this question: what would a champion do? And then you got to ask yourself the question in that pivotal moment, and you say a champion would train, a loser would not train, and I'm not a loser, so you go and train. So you can ask either a positive.
And I do the opposite.
You're wide reverse to me. Positive, what would a champion do? What would a winner do? What would a graduate do? What would a successful business person do? What would a successful person do? And then do it. Other people go, what would a loser do? And that irritates them so much.
Well, I hate the word average. I always say, what would an average person do right now? And that just drives me. I couldn't go to bed if I hadn't done the things that I'd promised myself, because that's what average people do. They don't do it.
Well, you can ask this: what would a silver medalist do?
At our house, you don't win silver, you lose gold.
Exactly right. Exactly. And that's it's a different headspace.
Yeah.
Actually, research shows that people who won the silver medal are worse off mentally in the future than people who didn't even get a medal.
Yeah.
Because they're going, geez, I'm so close to the gold.
Yeah.
And not taking anything away from that, but sometimes champions have a different mindset.
And what's the other quote is, I'm not particularly interested in winning, which is me, but I bloody hate losing.
That's true. That's true, because I'm not a loser. So sometimes you got to use ask those right questions in that moment where you could have what you believe this very convincing made-up excuse.
All right, so let's wrap that up. You could ask the question, why will 2020 be my worst year ever? And your brain will tell you.
You come up lots of reasons.
There's plenty of reasons to make it your worst year ever. Plenty of things have happened externally, but what if you ask this question? How will I make 2020 my best year ever?
It's interesting you say that, because one of another colleague of mine who I spoke to a little while ago, when I first spoke to him, he came up and he says, this has been the worst year, it's been a shit year. I've lost my job, I've lost motivation, I was selling my house and that fell through, I'm not
What's
on
the
track
big
in my
story?
taekwondo, I'm not going for my next grading. And after one conversation, it wasn't just me, but I just put the thoughts in his head. And a good month after, it's turned out he's now got a new job, which is a fantastic job, good money. He sold his property. He's got a new property. He's competing in the World Taekwondo Championships.
Thank you,
with me.
Kman.
And he's
getting married?
also going for his next Dan grading, his third Dan, and he's getting married.
Best year ever.
Best year ever.
And it was going to be his worst year.
And the only difference was just the change in mindset. So
You can.
it's not what happens to you, it's what you think about what happens to you that counts.
May you choose to change your mindset.